Good times. Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, we make stuff and we try not to be hard on ourselves. And if you're returning, you already know that. If you had a chance to watch my last video, you probably saw that I turned a 50-cent blazer into a pretty cool wool waistcoat. One of the questions that I had at the time was, what was I gonna do with the skirt?
I'm not sure what I want to do with the skirt.
It's almost like Pinterest hears me when I say those questions out loud, because I think the next evening I ran into this picture of a Harris tweed wool tote and my little brain went, haha. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna take a skirt and we are going to turn it into a wool tote with leather handles. So here's the skirt in question. This is a size 12 Alfred Dunner. It is 75% wool and 25% nylon, and it has this polyester lining to it. In general, I think totes are pretty easy, especially if you don't do zippers or anything like that, and we're not doing zippers today. So my thought is we're gonna cut this as close to the original measurements as possible. We are going to add some interfacing to it to give it a little bit more body, attach the lining, and by that I mean tack it down on the inside so it doesn't shift around, add the handles, and be done. And I think this is gonna be a pretty quick project. Famous last words, I know, that's my hope. Let's lay everything out and get to cutting. So let's take a look at this skirt and just see how it's made. Now clearly the waistband has been pleated into a smaller thing just to kind of give it some shape, but in general this is kind of a pretty straight skirt. We do have a back vent here that affects both the lining and the wool part of it. So it is about 21.5 inches wide. The original is 17 wide by 14 tall. I think what I should really do is cut it maybe 18 by 15 so that I've got some seam allowance there. Like I said in my last video, because this is pretty well put together, they actually took care to line up the pattern, so I can actually go off of that as a measuring guide. 15 inches takes us to about here. I'll probably go up to the bottom of this pane, this window pane here. So 18 inches takes us here. So I'll get this all flattened out. I'll pin it so that it doesn't shift around too much while I'm cutting it, and then I'll get it cutted. And we'll cutted. Holy crap. Cutted. I said cutted, like it's a real word. And I'll get it cut the right way. Ta-da! Now, if you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know that one of the things I preach the most is use the factory hems to your advantage, because hemming is one of those end of the process things that I hate doing, and if somebody's already done it for me, then I'm going to try to utilize that. So my thought is that the bottom of the skirt is actually going to end up being the top of the bag, because not only is the wool hemmed down professionally, but so is the lining. So I can actually just tack the lining down to the inside here and it's gonna look pretty professional. I'll sew along the cut sides and that'll be the bottom and the side. But before I do that, I want to add interfacing to the wool so that it gives it just a little bit more body, because right now, you know, it's a skirt. It's gonna like flump down, and nobody wants a fancy tote to just be like so let's put some interfacing in and then we'll work on the rest of it. Couple of fun new developments. First, what I'm using as interfacing is not interfacing, it's heat and bond. So this is not interfacing, this is to stick fabric to other fabric. But that's okay, because I think I've got some firmer cotton that I can stick to the back of this that will act as interfacing, so ultimately that's not a big deal. But also, because it's heat and bond, I accidentally heated and bonded it to my ironing board. Look at this. going great. So I'm gonna trim this up, continue sticking it down, and put some faux interfacing in here. It's good times. So I have sewed my edges, so down one side and down the bottom. The next step is to make this tote feel a little bit more bag-like rather than envelope. You have to square off the corners. And so the best way to do that is to, at the corner that you've sewed, to bring those sides together like that, and then sew across this way. I'm not gonna do a real big one for this because I don't need it to be overly dramatic, but you know, something small will at least give it like a little bit of a base to sit on. So I'm gonna do that with both corners. Then I will sew up the lining part of it, put the same corners on there, and then put it inside of this, tack it down, and add handles, and then it'll be done. Also, if you'll notice, I put the heat and bond and then the lining, it has a lot more body to it. It still flops, but it doesn't just completely sag. I hope that makes sense. It's a little more substantial now. Look at how nice it is. I've got my nice little corners at the bottom, and then I just added the lining back in for that, so it just fits nice and snugly inside there. And I did hand stitch it down only because I don't like machine stitching this kind of stuff, so I can control the fit just a little bit better. That heat and bond that I put on there with another piece of fabric really gives it, you know, a little bit more body, so it stands up by itself. So we're gonna do handles next. And you might be thinking,
Katie, I don't know how to do leather stuff.
and I'm gonna tell you, that's fine. You could do fabric handles on this, but what I'm gonna do today is I have this old leather belt. It has lost its little buckle. I'm going to cut off the holes for it, and then each of my handles is going to be about that. So I'm gonna punch a hole in it, put a rivet in there. So it's not gonna be the 4 rivets that you see in the picture. It's gonna probably just be 1 or 2, and then it'll be done. The only reason why this has taken as long as it has is because I put heat and bond rather than interfacing. To reiterate, handles. We'll get this attached to the bag, and then we'll be finished. And we'll have a $100 bag for not $100. Let's move on to the next step. Whatever you use to cut leather, make sure that it's sharp. I have these scissors linked below. These are amazing because they will cut through leather as well as through fabrics. So I'm gonna cut the holes off here, and then I'm going to cut this guy in half so that I have 2 handles. Now, something you could do is you could round off the edges of these if you wanted to, so that it's a little more decorative than just this blunt edge. Here's a little button. here we are. This is our end product. In total, I think this took maybe 3 or 4 hours to do, and I think part of the reason why it took so long was because of the heat and bond rather than the fusible interfacing. That's one. And then 2, I hand stitched the lining into the top of the purse. If I had machine stitched that, then it would have probably saved me 20 or 30 minutes. But look, I mean, the fabric itself was 50 cents out of a 50-cent skirt, and it matches my waistcoat. So if you have old pieces of clothing laying around that maybe doesn't fit you anymore, or they're definitely not in style anymore, give this a shot. It was very, very easy. You don't even need to use leather handles and rivets. You could just sew on some fabric handles out of maybe some ribbon or the stuff that's used for dog collars. Could make a just fine handle for this. So that's it. I have 2 new wardrobe pieces out of a $1 investment, and I'm pretty stoked. As always, thank you for sticking around. Thank you for joining me on this particular journey, and hopefully it inspires you to go out and make your own thing out of other things. Until next time, thank you. Bye. The stuff that are... So if I had shit.